Well, welcome to the Beyond Cinema studio at Sundance, Shaul, Christina. Firstly, congratulations on having the film up here.
Thank you.
And being back for you, Shaul. It's
Thank
pretty
you.
cool.
Yeah.
Now, this film, Trophy, first of all, I've read something about what you said about the title of the film, and I really like it. So I want our viewers to kind of get a concept for why you called the film Trophy.
Yeah, I guess it came along. It was actually Luke, who works with us, idea to call it Trophy, which was like we were immediately glued because it was so simple. But it actually represents more because I think trophy people only think about the hunting aspect of a trophy animal. But we kind of saw it as something wider. In the film, we go, one of our characters, John Hume, the world's largest rhino breeder, who is for legalization of horn trade. And we kind of understood that to many different people, trophies are quite different. And one man's rubbish could be another man's trophy, as we were told in, I think, Namibia. And so we kind of like connected to that simple name about this human desire to use animal in a bizarre way.
And you know, trophy, like for John, to save the rhinos, for example, is his trophy. For Philip, it's the animal on the wall. For the wildlife officer, it's saving the elephants from extinction. For the poachers, it's actually the money they get from the elephants they poach.
Yeah.
So I think as you go deeper into the film, the symbolicness of the title actually, you know, if you really dig deep, it means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, John has that moment where he's kind of screaming at everyone, saying that if you're not for the legal trade, then you're pro the illegal trade.
Yeah.
And he gets really heated about it. And there's moments like that, even with the guy who runs the safari, where he's quite emotional about having to let go these animals, but yet whatever it is, that driving force for people to enable people to have that experience of hunting these incredible creatures, you can tell there's like conflict on many levels. When the film opens, even those first gunshots, just the sound quality on those gunshots, I found really kind of visceral and really kind of struck through my body. I know sound is like so important as well for this film, but talk to me about those moments that for you kind of really still, when you see it, kind of resonate. Like, what is it? Which things for you still carry
I think
that
there's
power?
a couple. We always like that opening scene about Philip and his kid because I think one thing, I didn't grow up in a hunting environment whatsoever, so I went into this not getting it at all. Christina grew up in northern Minnesota. She's not a hunter, but everybody around was. And I think you really do quickly understand that for some people it's just rite of passage. But it involves killing. And it's this very bizarre dynamic that repeated itself of how people react and how you're always kind of waiting and the gun comes up. Poof, and it never stopped scaring you. You're like, the camera jumped. And so there's something really strong about that moment, no matter how much you are looking forward to it or knowing that it's coming. I think obviously it got harder and harder to see. We both had a hard time on the elephant hunt. Never seen elephants before in the wild personally. Spent a couple of days tracking elephants. Same feeling. Suddenly it just happened. Surprised us. I remember the elephants running away and just crying. They're such social animals that to hear all these elephants crying and Philip is there full of joy because he's pursued his trophy. And it was just this moment of disbelief that it's real. But again, I think we found that it's much more complex than what you feel. And we always said, all right, it's important to feel, but what do we think? And that dynamic right there led us to make the film the way we made it.
Yeah. What's the ultimate conversation that could be had as a result of this film?
I think one thing is to come in with it with your preconceived notions. A lot of people will see it through the lens that they believe in the relationship to animals. You know, if you're a hunter, you believe that, you know, you can use animals. If you're a non-hunter, maybe it's that you want to preserve animals and leave them where they are. And for the film, to come into the film with those you know, your perspective, but then to leave with more questions than answers. And I think those questions themselves create a dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, you look at these two worlds and it's almost like two religions. And it's a very polarizing issue across the board. But if we can start to get these two religions to have a conversation, I mean, at the end of the day, it's the decline of animals is going exponentially over the years, and something has to be done. And whether conservation on one hand is leaving them alone and the other hand hunting them to put an economic value on an animal, they're two separate possible solutions, but unless we talk about them, then nobody gets anywhere.
Yeah. Did it change your personal viewpoint, the film?
Yeah, I think probably, I think Shaul
It probably
more than
changed me a little more, just because she was familiar with hunting, and to me, coming born in Israel, to her, hunting a deer is just what you do. To me, you just killed Bambi.
Yeah.
Screw you. I came in very emotional about it. And it's interesting because you go pretty quickly and say, well, I did have a burger, though, today. How did that cow grow? It didn't come from the supermarket.
Yeah.
So, it kind of I think we kept wanting to challenge ourselves about it and not to assume anything and to let we did predominantly try to give people who believe in this concept of putting money on an animal have their voice, because most of us from where we came from don't believe that. And so, we wanted them to change us and hear them out. With that said, I do think, and the film I think shows it in quite a brutal way, that there are things that don't add up there too. It's not a one-way. We're not walking in here just to kind of make liberals say, oh, you're just missing it all out. We're really trying to challenge both sides because, like Christina said, there's this idea like abortion or something. You come in, you have your opinion, and you don't move. This is what I think, this is what you think, and I'm going to argue really hard, and I'm sure I'm right. And that's pretty destructive here because it's just not that way. The most I change is on rhino horn.
Mm-hmm. Same.
It looked so bad, and you live in this thought that let's just make this. Why can't we let's do anti-poaching and teach people that this shit doesn't work? But millions of people have been doing it for thousands of years, and like we said, everybody has their own trophy. Does it really make more sense than a line on a wall? It's all ludicrous to me.
Yeah.
But the rhino is the one animal that does not have to pay with its life. Its horn grows. It's getting killed because it walks around with literally gold on it as its horn. It's so expensive. But that's kind of what could save it if you just are able to twist that around. And so I think, and my problem is, I'm fine if you don't accept that solution, but I'm not fine if we're not allowed to talk about this. And right now, the common belief is that it's disgusting to think or say, and I think we have to change that.
Yeah. And obviously there's a lot of discussion to be had on, using a cow example when that's not a threatened species, right? Or that it's disconnecting us from a food supply versus some sort of form of
Sure.
entertainment or...
There are examples, though, of animals that have been on the brink of extinction. American buffalo, others. Vacuna that is used to, it has this really beautiful wool that people love to use that we humanity, drove it to the brink of extinction, and then we empowered breeders through economic value, and it has paid off.
That's right.
So, another animal you don't have to, in this situation, you don't have to kill it to use its commodity.
Right.
Vacuna.
But at first they were decimating them.
Yeah.
And then they gave them to the communities, and the communities were the ones that started to breed these animals.
And they started shaving them instead of killing them because all they wanted is a wool.
Right.
And so, you could say shaving is quite like cutting a horn off. Again, is it? I wish we just didn't have this, but I also wish we didn't have drugs. I wish we didn't have a lot of things.
Yeah. Is it easier for you to, or harder for you to kind of live these experiences visually, the differentiation between narco, which is people, and animals that are seen as being more innocent?
It's different. I think for people, it's actually strangely harder to see animals because they didn't do anything. They're not part of our political, social. I remember when the elephant gets shot in the movie. I remember we said it was just there having breakfast. What did it ever do? So it was really, really difficult. I spend a lot of time in Juarez doing narcocultura, and I got very close to the people and lost people I know. So it's hard, At the end of the day, I think it makes more sense that it's people dying, but it was very hard with animals, and I think a crowd is more angered by animals killed than people in a weird way.
Yeah. Talk to me about all the places you traveled to collect this story too. Because it was South Africa, Zimbabwe.
Yeah, I mean, we actually started in the United States. The first place we went was Las Vegas SCI convention, which is a yearly convention that brings 25,000 people for a weekend to book hunts, to buy clothing, to,
Buy anything.
yeah, to buy anything. And a lot of them were taking their trips to Africa and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And then we moved into South Africa where we met John Hume. And then from there we went to Namibia. And in Namibia we followed Philip Glass, was one of our main characters.
Yeah.
And we met him actually in the airport in Namibia. We had booked a hunt through an outfitter that invited us to come on this hunt and said, Philip really wants to be a part of this documentary. And so we were a little skeptical at first, but we were very pleased and appreciative of who Philip was as a person, both on camera and off camera. And I think that kind of enticed us to keep going. So we also went with Philip to Zimbabwe.
So you allowed kind of the people you meet to dictate the journey you took.
Yeah, I think we had some specific ideas as we started to learn about the industry of where things were, where we needed to be. Like South Africa is a big hub, especially when you're looking at breeding and privatization of land and an economic model of animals that actually works.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time there with John, but also with other breeders and other outfitters, because it's where a lot of people go, South Africa, to hunt. And then it was following a hunt or two other places. So they did dictate a little bit, but there were specific spots where we wanted to start with.
Yeah, there was such outrage, obviously, on the internet when Cecil the lion.
Right.
We were right in the thick of making the
Yeah.
movie. And we're like,
Yeah.
oh my God, we're going to lose access. What the hell's going to happen now?
Right? It's like, how does that, that happening while you're already on the go?
It kind of played out okay. It definitely shook things up for a second. We were about a year into the production of the film. We realized how much people care and how much people are outraged and how much they don't know, because by that time we've kind of learned a lot. So that was all interesting, but yeah, it definitely shook up things in terms of access. Was Philip, specifically the hunter we'd landed, I think it made him more passionate to tell his story, because Philip always knew it wasn't about us agreeing about everything. It wasn't about, I think that's why we liked him as a character. He was like, look, as long as you portray me for who I am, I'm happy to participate. I want the discussion. And I remember people close to the movie saying, this guy's going to be the most hated man in America. I don't think that's true. I don't agree with him on a lot of things. I don't think you, the viewer, necessarily will agree with him on everything. But he doesn't flip-flop. It's just that guy. And so with him after Cecil, it just became the same. He's like, now it's more important than ever to tell my story. So
Yeah.
And also Cecil within this production of the film was, I don't know, we talked about it a lot as it being a timestamp. The world before Cecil and the world after Cecil. And even though it's like a small thing, it really caused, I mean, it wasn't a small thing, but it caused a bunch of global outrage and how the industry shifted before this happened to how it after it happened played a part in how we started to think about the film and where it was going. And, it's not just one side or the other, but we need everybody to talk about this.
Right. Even in the political climate with Trump's kids and
Yeah.
things like that, definitely played a role.
So all of these things.
yeah, it will play a role now,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Because I think Cecil was a part that people grabbed onto and were able to really push the hunting industry to the ropes a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think now they're feeling that new administration, obviously Trump kids being avid hunters, they feel like they're going to shift back and open things up, which, we'll wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
be interesting.
And finally, just congratulations on the acquisition of the film.
Thanks.
A two-pronged approach. Let us know a little bit about that and how exciting that might be for you guys.
We're very excited. We
Yeah.
kind of walked in with this idea that we loved, when Narco was here, Blackfish was here, and we saw how powerful it was and going to theaters in a big way and bringing on someone like CNN Films who could get to so many houses in middle of America and really kind of create a conversation. So that was kind of our dream going in. I think between The Orchard and CNN, we hit home run, and we'll wait for it to get pushed out and keep hoping for the best.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think we're very excited about bringing it further across the United States, because in some small areas or middle of America, it's a conversation that's going to shift and be different than maybe when we show it on the coast or showed it in different countries.
Yeah.
And so to be able to have that engagement, and I think this approach of doing both theatrical and broadcast is going to
And we definitely
really help with that.
definitely want to take it beyond the doc classic viewer. We think this is really important to have these sides.
Yeah,
And you know, that hunting side, I think we care about it. I cared in Narco to show the kids who believed in the music to make them think.
Right.
I think we care deeply here about showing it to these sides and really, and I hope we find ways to make the film really create conversation.
Right, you can take it back to Vegas.
Take it back
Yeah.
to Vegas. We just had an interview with South African press, so I think we're trying to engage the supply and the demand, the outrage, then the for, the against, and kind of let the film make everybody think, because I don't think we took a side or made cheap down anybody in the process.
Very cool. Well, it'll be interesting to hear how your own personal advocacies kind of change over the course of the next 18
Yeah,
months or so. But
I agree.
congratulations on having the film here and being able to reuse some of the music you used in Narco.
Actually, you should talk
Finally, someone
You should talk
you
about
know,
that for
there
a
was
second.
actually a reason for it. I was
Yeah.
wondering, you're the first to notice. So that music was called The Machine, and it was the making of a CDs that creates an industry of death. And when we went into this with Jeremy, the same composer, I used it as temp, and Jeremy said, that's Narcos music, we got to take it out. And I said, you know, it actually speaks to the same idea of taking death and commoditizing and creating an industry. And so we kept it in there for a while, and then we actually all kind of got on board and you say, no, this actually makes sense. So, but good ears.